They discovered the shocking revelation of God's command to cook bread over feces. Few knew what truly happened that night in the dusty streets of Jerusalem, as the air thick with dread hung low among the weary faithful. The world was a complex tapestry of despair, whispers of famine danced in the shadows, and hope flickered dimly like a dying candle. It was then that a decrepit prophet named Ezekiel received a divine command that would send ripples of disbelief through the trembling hearts of his people. "Cook your bread over human waste," God instructed him, the words echoing like thunder in the silence of the night. What madness! What horror! The very idea twisted guts and turned stomachs into knots. Why would the Almighty choose such a repulsive method to expose a deeper truth? With each hesitant step toward his fate, Ezekiel felt the heat of judgment on his scruffy skin, the thought of his people's rejection weighing heavily on his soul. In those ancient days, sacrifice and suffering were entwined deeply in the fabric of society, yet none could prepare themselves for this. The murmurs of the onlookers were filled with disbelief and disgust. Is this true? Has God truly abandoned us? The faces around him morphed through a chaotic blend of confusion, horror, and sorrow. Dust swirled around their feet like the rising fear in their minds. Ezekiel stood there, heart racing, trembling hands as he prepared to carry out the unthinkable command. Under the flickering light of a dimming sun, he began to pile the grim materials. The stench was overwhelming, an invisible shroud that clung to his nostrils, yet he pressed on, guided by an unseen force pushing him into the depths of madness and revelation. The people closed in, their eyes wide with a mix of dread and morbid curiosity. What kind of God would ask this? One woman gasped, clutching her child, whose eyes reflected innocent confusion. An air of scandal thrived, edging easily into the hearts of the crowd. As flames began to lick at the bread laid over the foul heat, a strange miracle unfolded. The bread, though tainted in origin, rose beautifully, golden and tempting against the backdrop of despair. It transformed into a symbol of stark contradiction. How could something so unholy deliver nourishment? Fear mingled with awe as the onlookers were entranced, staring as if witnessing the heavens opening. Their hearts softened, if only for a moment, against the harshness of their reality, yet nestled amidst the intrigue, a question loomed large: what was God truly revealing through this horrifying trial? Was it simply punishment, or a call to deeper wisdom, to challenge their notions of holiness? As the smoke wove its tale into the twilight, the crowd murmured among themselves, their emotions torn between revulsion and an awakening spark of understanding. Ezekiel's heart thudded in his chest. He was caught between obedience and the cries of his people. With each passing moment, the flames did more than cook bread, they ignited doubt and reflection on the very nature of faith. Would the people grasp the lesson hidden in plain sight? Or would they recoil from this shocking truth, convinced of their own limitations? Their eyes darted between the bread and their battered lives, each question touching the core of their existence. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the last rays of daylight melted into the horizon, the crowd's murmurs swelled like a tide, crashing against the shores of understanding. Each flicker of the fire seemed to coax forth a memory from their weary hearts, a memory of hunger that gnawed not just at their bellies but also at their spirits. Yet, amid their disbelief, a shared yearning threaded through the assembly. Their lives had been marred by suffering, and they pined for hope even when confronted with the grotesque. Ezekiel continued his task, wrestling with the growing urgency within him. Ignoring the bitterness in the air, he reflected on the command of God that perched heavily upon his shoulders. Could such a display awaken the people to a reality that had long been obscured? He sensed the pulse of their fear, but with it pulsed an insatiable hunger for truth, the truth wrapped in the loaves he was preparing, a truth they had been avoiding for too long. From the back of the gathering, an elder named Aaron, known for his fiery words and unyielding devotion, broke the hesitance. Brothers and sisters, look beyond what your eyes see in revulsion. Is it not in our darkest moments that we are drawn to the light of understanding? His voice cracked with age, yet the conviction resonated deeply among the multitude. As Ezekiel pulled the bread from the flames, he could feel the essence of Aaron's words sinking into the hearts of those present. It was not merely about the bread, it was about facing the discomfort that life imposed. As they witnessed the splendid rise of the loaves, a consciousness stirred in them, nudging awake the recognition of their own sacrifices made in silence, their own struggles woven into the story of survival. However, amidst this newfound contemplation came an unsettling realization, one that would clash with long-held beliefs. What if God was not merely about the clean and the sacred? What if, in the hollowness of their circumstances, he was testing their capacity to find grace in unholy places? The bread, now golden and alluring, was a mere reflection of their own souls. How often had they overlooked the beauty in the hardships that defined them, as the aroma entwined with the sultry evening air, tempting those on the fringes. Ezekiel found a moment of pause, a quiet space amidst the chaos. A lingering question stirred within him, echoing through the fabric of his own faith. Could they come to terms with a God who demands such reverence from the brokenness of the world? Were they ready to seek the divine hand in places they had long deemed unworthy? The crowd watched, anxiety intermingling with a hesitant hope. Their thoughts vacillated between the ashes of despair and the challenge of transformation. Lay the essence of a divine truth. Even as food provided by the earth had grown scarce, the bread had arisen from the depths of their revulsion, illuminating an unseen possibility. With the first bite taken, a shared silence enveloped them. How curious, they mused, could it be that nourishment could arise from something so profane? As the night deepened, a flicker of realization began to take root. Though their hearts felt heavy, there was an inkling that the journey towards understanding was just beginning. What if, in their pursuit of the holy, they had forsaken the divine lessons hidden within the mundane? The flames danced menacingly in the backdrop, casting shadows of uncertainty where hope fought for dominance. Questions wrapped around them tightly, each with the potential to unwrap an unapproachable truth. Would they allow this moment of revelation to usher in a new perspective on divinity itself? As the night deepened and the stars began their quiet vigil, a somber contemplation took hold of the crowd. The air was thick with a heady mixture of anticipation and doubt, as they chewed on the loaves, allowing the warmth to mingle with the coolness of their spirits. Each bite bore the weight of a deeper significance. Though the bread seemed simple, it had awakened questions that probed beneath the surface of their existence. Ezekiel noticed the shift in the atmosphere, the sacred dance of light and shadow mirrored their inner turmoil. A flame flickered, and in its soft glow, he observed the faces that had once betrayed only fear now colored with something else, wonder. Were they beginning to grasp the weight of the message that had been baked into the very fabric of their bread? A realization began to diffuse through the crowd like the gentle rise of the dough he had crafted. Perhaps this sacred act of sharing held the potential to redefine their understanding of what it meant to dine with God. Aaron, with eyes brimming with fierce hope, stepped forward once again, his voice resonant against the backdrop of the night. "Let us reflect, dear ones," he intoned, his words bathing the assembly in a mix of reverence and challenge. Can we not see that even the most seemingly profane aspects of our existence can lead us to profound truths? Has not the very dust of the earth become a vessel for grace? In what we may deem unworthy lies the possibility of divine revelation. The murmurs swelled again, uncertainty clashing with curiosity. Yet even in this moment of potential enlightenment, doubt flickered in the corners of their minds. Was it truly possible that the sacred could emerge from unclean hands? Could the divine dwell amidst their struggles and sufferings? Ezekiel pondered these questions, experiencing an awakening of his own. Was he, too, guilty of searching for God only in the sheen of perfection? In the pristine temples and the lofty praises? The bread, scorched perhaps by the sun of dejection yet risen from the ashes of despair, offered a narrative of resilience. It showed that God's presence could indeed be found within the textures of life's harsh realities. As conversation peeled around him, Ezekiel noted a shift from skepticism to restless pondering. The people exchanged glances, silent in their seeking, yet unbroken in their fellowship. They understood now that every bite carried with it an echo of the divine story. They all were a part of a story laced with struggles worth embracing. This was the first step towards confronting the darkness of their lives and understanding that grace often arrives in disguises. He turned his attention to an eager group of children who had gathered near the warmth of the fire, their expressions animated. They tore into the bread, laughter bubbling forth like the dough itself, their innocence a reminder of simplicity often overshadowed by adult worries. "Why is the bread so special?" one of them questioned, crumbs dancing on their lips as they spoke. "Perhaps," Aaron replied, "it is through the trials that we learn to value the feast before us. True nourishment lies not merely in the act of eating, but in the communion we share and the truths we uncover." A ripple of understanding coursed through the crowd. The loaves were not to be merely consumed, they were to be revered, a challenge to their preconceived notions about sustenance and the sacred. What if God's greatest commandments were embedded not just in lofty ideals but in the grit of everyday existence? As Ezekiel stood before them, he felt a weight settle upon him, a call to lead them further down this path of revelation. He sensed a shift, one that beckoned them to allow discomfort to become a teacher, to accept that the journey towards the divine might demand them to walk through the shadows of their lives hand in hand. With a heart beating in tandem with the crowd's awareness, he questioned aloud, "Can we embrace the unholy in our lives as a mirror to reflect our deepest yearnings for connection with the divine? May we find grace not in cleanliness, but on the very edges where light meets darkness." The flames flickered once more, casting shapes against the night that danced to the cadence of their hearts. A silence returned, pregnant with the weight of possibility. Yet, despite this shared epiphany, trembling uncertainty lingered in the air. What if the struggle to reconcile their understanding of the sacred and the profane was just the beginning of a deeper journey? Would they be willing to continue down this path, seeking a God who thrived even in the most unexpected of places? As the moon cast its silver gaze upon the gathering, the tensions within the assembly swelled into a symphony of unspoken revelations. Each healer, fisherman, and laborer shared an unquenchable thirst not just to feed their bodies, but to nourish their spirits. The gathering's pulse quickened as fresh understanding emerged, yet the air remained thick with the weight of a new, unnamed struggle, the search for truth cloaked in uncertainty. Ezekiel felt a pull on his heart. The looming mystery nestled within their hunger for divine closeness urged him to venture deeper into the depths of their reality. What if, he mused, his voice steady but firm, the bread we share tonight not only nourishes our bodies but offers us a key to the kingdom of heaven? What if the act of creation itself, from the grinding of grain to the baking in the oven, reveals the richness of God's love in our labor? His words hung in the air, hanging like strings woven into a fabric yet unfinished. He glanced toward the fire, where flames leapt and twisted as if striving to reach the heavens, and he was reminded of the transformation of utter chaos into beauty. The bread, now scattered amongst them, suggested that even their hardships, much like the roughness of the mere grains, could be a tapestry of divine artistry. But among the newfound introspection arose a lingering question. A voice rose timidly. It was Miriam, a woman known for her unassuming strength. She struggled with the weight of her own doubts as she cleared her throat to speak. "But Ezekiel, how does this connect to our everyday lives? Can we truly find richness in our mundane existence? Elders tell stories, revealing wisdom, yet weigh us down with the knowledge of past failures." Ezekiel felt the pulse of the people, each breath urging towards connection. "Miriam," he replied softly, "perhaps that is the very challenge we confront tonight. This bread, resembling our own lives' journey, it, too, is kissed by the sun, shelled by rain, and occasionally sullied by a moment's neglect. Yet still, it rises. Can we accept that our own lives, no matter how flawed, can shelter the divine?" Miriam sat, processing these thoughts, her brow furrowed, yet something within her began to unfurl gently, as if an echo of an age-old promise whispered of plenitude springing forth from scarcity. Around her, others echoed concerns, slowly transforming fear into patience, and doubt into dialogue. What echoes lay buried in their hearts? What truths were yet waiting to be unearthed in the shared experience of their mundane lives? Just beyond the surface of their trials lay an exquisite intimacy with God, yearning to be acknowledged. Aaron stepped forth again, his presence strengthening this patchwork quilt of emotional revelations. Think of the prophet, he proclaimed, who found sustenance in barren places. Could it be that the wilds of our existences are not merely voids but spaces alive with possibility? In each grain of our lives' burdens lies an opportunity for a miracle. Does not our very struggle speak of a covenant-binding promise between humanity and the divine? Slowly, the crowd began to murmur. There was a stirring of recognition. Hidden beneath layers of sorrow and distress was an opportunity to embrace a theology not of escape from hardship but of finding the sacred within it. We feast on bread tonight not as individuals, but as a collective, unified by the peaks and valleys we traverse on this sacred journey, Ezekiel affirmed. As we break bread together, we hold within our hands the power to heal within ourselves and each other, yet shadows lingered deep, unsettling questions simmered beneath this growing tapestry of understanding. Could they truly navigate the uncomfortable dance between the sacred and the profane? Would they allow their struggles to flourish into beauty, knowing they were woven together like grains of wheat? The embers of uncertainty glowed like flickering stars. The assembly could feel the vibrancy of the night swell around them, yet the revelation of God's command remained shrouded in an unquenchable mystery. Would this gathering choose to partake in vulnerability, allowing the flames of their struggles to guide them into an unwavering search for the divine? Or would they retreat once more, cowering back into the familiarity of doubt that lay just beyond the warming firelight? As the fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the faces gathered around it, a profound silence enveloped the assembly. Each person found themselves caught in the depths of contemplation, wrestling with the echoes of the night's discourse. The air was thick not just with smoke, but with the weight of expectation and unfulfilled questions. Ezekiel's heart stirred at the sight before him. The range of emotions was unmistakable: longing, fear, hope, and the ever-present hunger for understanding. He sensed a shift, a collective awareness beginning to pulse among them, a yearning to delve deeper into their reality, much like the bread they shared. How could this humble food, born of earth, water, and fire, connect them more profoundly to God's design? It was then that a newcomer emerged from the throng: Abigail, a solitary widow known for gathering herbs on the outskirts of the village. Her presence commanded attention as she approached the fire, her gaze dancing between the flames and the faces of the assembly. With a voice tinged with a resolute softness, she raised the question that many were perhaps too hesitant to voice. But what of the ashes we all carry? Do they not taint our offerings? Is it not true that we're formed not only by the fertile soil of our blessings but also by the refuse of our mistakes? Her words, although soaked in sorrow, rang with a raw authenticity. Ezekiel felt the collective breath hitch, as if in that very moment they were all thrown into the depths of vulnerability. I sense the terror in what you speak, Abigail, he responded, allowing his voice to settle gently in the stillness. It is true we are burdened by the shadows of our past, and yet, what if that very refuse is part of our holy tapestry? What if, instead of banishing it, we dared to see it as a stepping stone towards something greater? As he spoke, a growing tension emerged within the assembly. Murmurs of tension transformed into a palpable electric energy. Could they embrace this notion? Could their very shortcomings catalyze their evolution toward communal resilience? Abigail's brow furrowed as uncertainty mingled with her grief. Can we truly bring our burdens before God and find beauty in them? She implored, looking around, her eyes searching for solace amid doubt. Can the ashes of our failures rise as nourishment? Ezekiel fell silent for a moment, recognizing the profound mystery of faith that they were grappling with. The fire seemed to lean closer as it flickered, a subtle reminder of transformation and renewal. Perhaps it is not merely about seeking perfection, he murmured. Like bread that rises, we too are called to neighbor the messiness of our lives with grace. The very act of kneading the dough, working through our struggles, might just reveal a taste of divine love. The implications hung heavily in the air. Could they find God amid their imperfections? Could they recognize that the divine might transform their ashes into something life-giving? The question weighed more than the bread they consumed. It sat heavy on their hearts. Miriam, moved by the collective energy of their discourse, piped up once more, her voice emboldened by revelation. What if the bread, in all its simplicity, tells a story beyond our struggles, echoing the larger narrative of humanity's innate need for connection. The assembly fell quiet, considering her words. A shared journey began to crystallize within them, their pain and their hopes, woven into a single fabric much like the bread they had been breaking together. Yet, with every realization came another question. Would they embrace their shared narrative as a catalyst for healing? Or would they shy away from the discomfort of confronting their realities, choosing instead the safety of denial? Ezekiel sensed the tensions rise anew, the pulsation of human experience echoing through their hearts. As the night wore on, the flames danced with uncertainty, reminding them that even in their struggles, the mystery of God's plan remained vast and beautifully intricate. As the stars shone bright overhead, illuminating a canvas of endless potential, the ultimate inquiry lingered. In the pursuit of truth nestled between toil and triumph, how would they choose to interpret their crossroads? Would they allow their longing for divine closeness to embolden their search, or would they remain shackled by fear to explore the depths of their own humanity? As the fire crackled more fiercely, a spark leaping forth, a hush washed over the assembly once again. It was as if nature itself bated its breath, awaiting the unfolding of a divine revelation. Abigail's poignant question still lingered in the air, curiously entwined with the scent of the burning wood. Ezekiel, feeling the stirrings of something profound yet unexplainable, gazed into the flames, letting the light guide him deeper into reflection. In that moment, a voice amongst the throng broke through the silence, a young man named Asher, whose face bore the scrapes and bruises of recent trials. What if we confront that stigma, Abigail? What if our brokenness isn't a flaw, but a call to serve? A call to heal? His words, as fragile as they sounded, resonated with an unexpected strength. My mother told me once that the hardest trials forge the strongest vessels. Could it be that our scars tell stories meant to inspire healing in others? A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. In this shared reflection, they began to consider that perhaps what they perceived as their collective shame could be transformed, a meaningless burden, into a cornerstone of compassion. Then, Miriam stood up once more, her spirit alight like the fire that warmed them all. We often speak of our burdens as weights dragging us down. But what if we began to see them as forming bridges instead? Could we share our stories, our failings and triumphs, and find a path through our shared struggles? The sparks of thought ignited a fragrant breeze of introspection within the group. Amongst them, the shadows of doubt began to fade, painted over by hues of understanding and acceptance. Yet, as they pondered this newfound perspective, a sobering truth tugged at their hearts. Could they truly lay bare their souls in front of one another, and before God, without fear or judgment? Asher, inspired by the growing bond between them, took a step closer to the fire, casting his gaze around the assembly. There's a tale from our forebears, he said quietly, of a great leader commanded by God to cook his food over the defilements of his people's past. It was a radical command, a call to confront the very ashes of their failings and rise anew. His revelation sent ripples through the assembly. They conjured images of the sacrifices made in the name of sustenance, the seemingly unholy merging of life and its remnants, a transformative act that asked them to embrace their very essence, tainted though it may be. Could it be, Ezekiel interjected, that we are being called to face the remnants of our moral decay? That the cooking of bread over excrement illustrates God's ability to draw life from decay? Is it not the paradox of our faith, where the divine finds the sacred in the most inconceivable of places? Silence fell over the gathering, as the flames flickered and crackled, reflecting their inner tumult. Had they, up until this moment, shunned the very parts of their souls that need liberation? In this reflection, they encountered God's shocking revelation anew, inviting them to mend their hearts and accept not only their goodness but their imperfections for the sake of community and growth. Yet still, a question nagged at the edges of their collective consciousness. Would they dare arise together, face the ashes of their pasts, and engage in the holy act of transforming their burdens into tales of resilience? Or would they remain where comfort battled with revelation, hesitant to cross the threshold into change? As the fire burned on, illuminating the faces of the willing and the wary alike, the air grew thick with potential. The sacred mystery swirled amongst them, and the question lingered in their hearts. In embracing the fullness of their narrative, could they manifest change not only within themselves but within the wider fabric of their community? As the fire continued to dance and pulse with life, the atmosphere around them thickened with the weight of contemplation. The twinkling stars above began to seem like watchful eyes, bearing witness to the struggles and revelations shared beneath their gaze. Ezekiel could feel the gravity of the moment pull at his being, each soul standing before him carrying unspoken stories, a tapestry of both bitterness and hope. Miriam, sensing the stillness that followed Ezekiel's proclamation, reflected aloud, "We struggle in the shadows, fearing what it reveals about us. But what if darkness is not merely an absence of light, but a canvas upon which we can paint something beautiful? A place to understand our fears intimately?" Her words took root within the assembly, stirring deep within them the recognition of their shared vulnerability. They were not merely individuals bearing heavy burdens, they were woven together, a rich fabric of intention, each thread representing a unique and irreplaceable experience. Asher found courage in their collective introspection. "I remember a night not long ago, when I lay awake, tormented by my own shadows. It felt insurmountable, like standing at the edge of a chasm with no way to cross. But then, I remembered my mother's words, 'Healing begins the moment we dare to speak our truth.' Could it be that our trials serve a greater purpose, one that we have yet to uncover?" A low hum of agreement spiraled through the group, each individual wrestling with their own chasms. The fire's heat swelled with unspoken confessions, turning their fears into the raw material of transformation. Moses faced such trials, Ezekiel reminded them. When he stood before Pharaoh, demanding freedom for our people, he did not wield a sword. He relied on the truths embedded deep within his own failures, his stuttering voice, his doubts. Yet he marched forth, driven by a conviction forged in the fires of his past. This connection to their history reverberated within the circle, vibrating like the very flames that surrounded them. They recognized in Moses a kinship, a shared calling to confront their past as a means to step into freedom. The murmurs shifted, transforming from hesitance to determination. In the midst of this growing resolve, a figure emerged from the shadows, the elder Tabith, whose presence had been felt yet unseen. With a voice weathered by time and wisdom, she spoke softly, "To embrace our stories is also to recognize the divine weaving within them. We are not just participants in a single narrative, we are the very storytellers, chronicling a journey punctuated by grace and struggle. This inherent duality is God's call both to acknowledge our failings and to lift them up to the light." There was something profound about her declaration, for it shifted the perspective of the assembled. They began to realize that their scars were not simply remnants of failure but were also testimonies of survival and the proof of God's unwavering faithfulness. It was a complex painting, the dark strokes of pain creating a backdrop for the luminescence of hope. Yet, as they stood on the precipice of this revelation, an unsettling question pulsed in the very air they breathed: would they allow this understanding to break forth into actions that would inspire others? Would their collective courage be sufficient to inspire a community awakening, or would they retreat into the safety of silence, fearing the power of their own truths? As the fire illuminated the path before them, they held this looming uncertainty closely to their hearts, a fragile vine of hope growing amidst rich earth, wondering together, how would the stories of their pasts shape their future, and could their decision to step into the light truly alter the course of their lives and those around them? As the embers waned softly in the night, the warmth was now mingled with an aura of solemnity. The shared confessions had stirred the hearts of the assembly, yet an undercurrent of trepidation lingered in the air. In the shadows, the dense foliage rustled as if echoing the unspoken fears that had been laid bare. It was then that a gentle breeze swept through, stirring new thoughts and inviting inspiration, and it beckoned to the corners of each mind. Ezekiel, feeling the gravity of those simmering emotions, turned his gaze to the elder. "Tabith," he began, "you spoke of divine weaving and the narratives that intertwine. How do we discern the patterns in our lives when they often appear so tangled and chaotic?" With eyes reflecting the flickering flames, he awaited her wisdom. Tabith considered her response, allowing the moment to linger, as if the very air was pregnant with answers yet to be revealed. After a pause, she replied, "We must learn to listen not just to the words of others or to the scriptures we hold dear, but to our own spirits and the whisper of God within us. In the sacred tension between our pain and our hope lies the clarity we seek. This encounter with our own truth is our birthright. The crowd absorbed her words like parched earth drinking in the rain. Clarity was both a gift and a challenge, a call to deeper understanding. Miriam, feeling compelled to contribute, interjected, "But isn't it also daunting? To lay bare our vulnerabilities? We are afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of the weight of our own truths." "Indeed," Ezekiel replied. "Yet, perhaps that is our very task, to confront that fear, allowing our honesty to illuminate paths previously shrouded in darkness. The stories of our past do not just belong to us, they are part of a mosaic reflecting the heart of God." Looks exchanged among the assembly conveyed an unspoken realization, a shared acknowledgement that they were bound not only by their burdens but by the very act of revealing them. It was both terrifying and liberating, like a water's edge that awaited their leap. Asher raised his voice again, emboldened by the community's shifting energy. "I have often pondered the significance of our bread, the sustenance we rely upon. Remember how God provided manna in the wilderness? What if our very narratives, the struggles, the scars, are integral to the nourishment of our collective spirit? What if, like that manna, they must be harvested in humility and gratitude?" Whispers of agreement saturated the circle, each man and woman contemplating how their histories might offer bread not only to themselves but to others who walked similar paths. Then, an unexpected silence enveloped them, as if they sensed the presence of something greater, the divine wrapping around their collective story. At that moment, a faint rustling echoed from behind the gathered crowd. It was Abigail, a quiet and observant member of their group. She emerged hesitantly, a scroll in hand, revealing the inscriptions nestled within. "I found this among the elders," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "It speaks of a command from God, one that may seem shocking or repugnant but holds unexplored depths of meaning." A gasp rippled through the assembly as the implications unfurled. Various eyes widened, some with curiosity, others with apprehension. Ezekiel felt a stir within him, a tension both electric and divine. "What does it say?" Abigail unfurled the parchment, and the flickering candlelight transformed each intricate letter into an entity of its own. "It tells us that the preparation of bread may require the use of unclean things, an offering that invites contemplation over the deeper truths of our lives, perhaps calling us to reflect how we, too, must embrace the unconventional paths set before us." As each word settled upon their hearts, a myriad of thoughts erupted. Those gathered stood suspended, enraptured by the conflicting nature of the revelation. Was this revelation an invitation to delve deeper into their own understanding of purity and sacrifice? What could it mean for their individual and collective journeys? As the flames danced, reflecting the flickering doubts and hopes that surged forth, a reflective fog settled over them. They were left with the compelling question: what sacred transformations await us when we dare to embrace the challenging tasks laid before us, and how might our willingness to confront the unclean lead to a profound rebirth for ourselves and our community? The murmurs in the circle intensified, spreading like ripples from a thrown stone, as faces reflected a blend of shock and intrigue at Abigail's revelation. These words hung in the air, potent and challenging, stimulating both fear and a curious anticipation of what lay beneath their unsettling surface. Ezekiel's heart pounded, resonating with a longing to understand, to bridge the chasm between the meat of their existence and the divine invitation hidden therein. Could it be, he mused aloud, that this command is not merely about the act of preparing sustenance, but perhaps a metaphor for our lives? If we are to offer the unclean, the broken parts of ourselves, what then does it mean for the nourishment of our souls and the souls of others? Tabith nodded thoughtfully, her gaze fixed on the flames, as if they could illuminate the path ahead. "Indeed, dear Ezekiel. Just as bread is necessary for physical life, so too are the unvarnished truths of our existence vital for spiritual sustenance. If we shy away from the ugliness of our experiences, do we not deny ourselves the opportunity to blossom like the grain that must first fall to the ground?" Miriam, sensing the shift in energy, inquired, "But what of fear? The fear that in acknowledging our own dirtiness, we diminish ourselves, distorting our worth as bearers of God's light? How do we trade shame for revelation?" Ezekiel took a deep breath, considering her question, a delicate thread woven into the fabric of their gathering. Perhaps the essence lies in the community we cultivate. Circling around our shared stories and offered vulnerabilities fosters strength. When we learn to share our burdens, we become a collective loaf, each ingredient significant and necessary, enhancing the others. A soft sigh escaped from the assembly, the balm of understanding coursing through them. The recognition that their imperfections could serve a greater purpose was profound, as though a veil thinned ever so slightly, allowing a glimpse of harmony in their disparate journeys. Asher rose once more, the spirit of the gathering clearly animating him. And what of the unclean things amidst us? Are there not aspects of our pasts, our families, our own identities that we fight to suppress? Might they not be the very seeds from which new life can emerge if entrusted into the hands of the divine? A flicker of hope ignited in the circle, and each member began to breathe more freely, eyeing one another with a newfound camaraderie. Abigail, emboldened by their responses, added, "Let us remember the story of Ruth, who gleaned the fields of Boaz. She was once an outsider, marked by her past, yet became a pivotal part of a promise. By embracing her journey, she invited forth a royal lineage, teaching us that acceptance of our intertwined paths can yield unimaginable fruits." Ezekiel felt the weight of their shared history lifting, transforming into an opportunity for rebirth as the flickering flames mirrored their rising spirits. Yet a sense of urgency pricked at him. But if this investigation into our unclean aspects invites growth, will travel down such paths undoubtedly lead to revelation. An unexpected silence filled the space once again, the sacred echoes of their thoughts bouncing off the trees, mingling with the wind, carrying unanswered questions like seeds on the breeze. The truth of their maladies stood before them, daunting yet beckoning, as they collectively sought the deeper waters of their faith. In this moment, the profound clarity morphed into an unanswered question that lingered among them: what must we risk embracing in ourselves to uncover the depth of our calling, and what sacred transformations can emerge when we allow our own unclean truths to dwell among us? As dawn broke over the horizon, light spilled into the gathering like a promise. The air, once thick with tension and uncertainty, now was electric with an awakening spirit. Ezekiel looked upon the faces of those transformed overnight, their eyes reflecting the soft glow of the rising sun, signaling the dawn of new understanding. In the pale light, he recalled the fire's warmth, the conversations that peeled back layers of fear and doubt, revealing unity in their shared vulnerability. Here, gathered in the open, had been both a confession and a revelation. It was a tapestry woven from struggles redeemed by grace. The echoes of the previous night hung around them, alive with potential, and he marveled at how the bread, both humble and profound, had become a symbol of their communion, both with one another and with the divine. For so long, they had carried the weight of shame and fear, but it seemed that God's command to confront the repulsive had birthed a deeper truth. As they sat amongst the remnants of their shared meal, a newfound courage bubbled to the surface. When Ezekiel rose to speak, the warmth of hope poured from his heart, ready to cascade into the valley of their spirits. "My dear friends," he began, his voice steady and resonant, "this gathering is not merely a reprieve from the struggles we bear. It is the soil from which new life can sprout. We stood before our fears and let the flame of truth illuminate not just our darkness but the possibility of our destinies intertwined." His words wrapped around them, warming every heart with a reminder of their collective resilience. Each of you has spoken of trials and burdens, the unclean and the sacred. Yet our divine calling, stark and vivid, is to rise from this intersection. The bread we shared, cooked over the ashes of our struggles, teaches us that even the foul and broken can yield nourishment. Can we not see that in our imperfections lies a reflection of the divine? As he pressed forth, the crowd stirred, a palpable energy rising amongst them. He continued, "We stand on the precipice of transformation. Just as the loaf, once tainted, has become food for the weary, so too can our stories imbued with pain and healing become sustenance for others navigating their own despair. Let us become the lift for each other as we forge pathways toward wholeness." Elder Aaron, emboldened, rose beside him. "Indeed, Ezekiel. Let this be a turning point. Our stories of shame can be seeds if we share them generously. And in their sharing, we break down the walls of isolation and judgment. Light dances through our wounds, illuminating hope, and uniting us further in our journeys. Together, we possess the power to breathe life into each other's scars and fortify each other's spirits. At that moment, the crowd shifted from an assembly separated by individual struggles, they morphed into a singular entity, each voice contributing to a glorious crescendo. The truth of their stories etched into their souls like a covenant, each member rising, heartened by the urgency to heal not just themselves, but one another. Miriam stepped forward. Let us journey together, recognizing the divine in our shared experiences. Every moment of shame met with acceptance can be a step toward healing, both personally and communally. We must sit with our discomfort and view it as a piece of art yet to be completed, decaying edges framing the beauty of resilience. Suddenly, a ripple of agreement surged through the gathering, and they began to voice their own stories, each revealing glimpses of struggle intertwined with fragments of hope. I lost everything, one man proclaimed, his voice trembling. And yet, in that loss, I found compassion for others on the brink. My despair gave rise to purpose. Another added, I felt burdened by guilt for years, but unveiling that darkness in front of you all has freed me, ushering in grace I thought lost. The energy grew fierce, walls came crashing down as voices blended together in a celebration of authenticity. They recounted tales of pain transformed into pillars of strength, a mosaic of shared humanity painted with the hues of their collective suffering and victory. And within that moment, the miracles unfolded. What was once intended as a repulsive act transformed into a sacred ritual of connection. No longer just bread, it was life, the intersection of divine grace and human experience, each crumb imbued with the journey that has led them to this sacred gathering. As hope rippled throughout, Ezekiel looked up into the swirling sky, where the sun hung high, illuminating the hopeful faces around him. Look upon one another, he said, a weighty reverence in his tone. In each other lies the reflection of God's command, urging us to witness the sacred emerge from the mundane. Let us embrace both the light and shadows alike, for in their embrace lies the depth of our authenticity. Here, we learn that divine grace is not a distant ideal but a steady presence amid our trials. The faces around him alighted with understanding. They saw that their stories were threads in a formidable quilt, each bearing witness to the chronicles of survival and grace, now woven together in hope. As each heart revived, a quiet resolve formed, a commitment to carry forth the sacred act of shared vulnerability into the world beyond their gathering. The rising sun bore witness as they erupted into a chorus of voices, vowing to cultivate a community that embraced their unclean truths, allowing them to be vessels for compassion. Gazes locked, hands clasped, and shared breaths unfurled as they stepped into the dawn of acceptance, and so they set forth, reborn into their community, with an understanding of divine potential wrapped in their stories, transformed from the ashes of despair into a living hymn of hope. In the heart of Jerusalem, among dusty streets thick with despair, they emerged as a testament to the profound truth that indeed God dwells amidst the unholy, nurturing grace where there first had been only shame, for, in that sacred truth, they became the light for the world to see, the extraordinary revelation that even from the depths of darkness, one can rise to illuminate the pathways leading back to the heart of divine love. And such, by communion, they became bread for the hungry, light for those in shadows, and a new testament of faith for generations to come.